Is it soup yet?
Nope.
It's left me, so it's saying it's soup.
It's telling me the, oh, speculative, okay, wait. Okay, there it is. Yeah, we're good.
Yay, thank you, Vince. Go team, go. Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to Speculative Sundays, where you'll hear the possibilities by poets from around the world. I'm Akua Leslie Hope, greeting you from the ancestral land of the Onondaga, also known as the Seneca Keepers of the Western Door, in the area currently called Corning, New York. I pay homage to the Seneca past, present, and future. Today's poet is Vince Gotera, who teaches at the University of Northern Iowa, where he is the creative writing coordinator in the Department of Languages and Literature. He edited the North American Review from 2000 to 2016. Vince was the editor of Starline, the print journal of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association from 2017 to this year. His poetry collections include Dragonfly, Ghost Wars, Fighting Kite, and The Coolest Month. Gotta fix my mouth. Dragonfly, Ghost Wars, Fighting Kite, and The Coolest Month. His poetry has appeared in Abyss and Apex, Altered Reality Magazine, Dreams and Nightmares, Ekphrastic Review, Philippines Graphic from the Philippines, Rosebud, and the anthologies Multiverse from the UK and Dear America, among others. He blogs at The Man with the Blue Guitar. I eagerly await the publication of his novel and poems about a creature I met on a show called Grimm. He'll say more about who they are, but his evocative, I want to say this, his compelling work took me beyond the reflexive, exoticized, and perhaps inaccurate horrific into a deeper examination of otherness and the ever expanding possibilities in myth. Welcome, Vince Gotera. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Akua. Do you want to unshare the screen?
Yes.
There we go. Okay, great. 1 second. Okay, hi everybody. Wait, I'm having some technical problems here. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Wave at me.
I can, yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, I'm not in the speaker area though.
Vince, I see you and hear you. So I'm not sure what you're not seeing.
Okay. I mean, I'm not in the big area. Is that what you're seeing?
I'm seeing, as you're speaking, I'm seeing you.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Here we go. Okay. 1 second. My tablet timed out. All right, great. Okay, as Akua said, Um, I'm working on a novel in poems titled Aswang Love. And the aswang is a mythical Philippine monster that takes many forms: vampire, shapeshifter, ghoul, and other variations. The one that intrigues me most is the manananggal, which is a woman whose torso, the top half, can separate from her bottom half, the hips and legs, and grow wings, and then fly to prey on pregnant women and infants. Um, so in the novel, there are two lovers, Clara, who's a manananggal, and Santiago, a shapeshifter, and his monster form is a huge black dog. So the novel begins with how they meet. First, a poem from his point of view, and then a second poem that's from her point of view. And the year is 1936, and we're in the Philippines. Encounter on Good Friday. On his straw hat, his banig, under the inky susurrus of the mosquito net hung from the walls of his nipa hut, a bachelor farmer named Santiago de la Cruz lounges half asleep, half dreaming of the Easter sunrise mass day after tomorrow, and of today's penitentes flogging their own backs into bloody crosshatch, a couple crucified for a handful of long minutes. Tiago gazes upward now, toward the charcoal-tinged underside of his thatched palm leaf roof, and starts at an indistinct shadow above, shaped darkly like a crucified person. What? Tiago rolls out of the net and fixes his eyes above. Yes, there is something there in the pitch black. Wait, is it a dark brown woman with her arms outstretched, gripping the almost invisible bamboo supports of the roof? A ghost? A hallucination? Tiago rubs his eyes and looks again. Her eyes are dark red like dying coals. He crosses himself quickly, notices a rippling behind her like a morning dress curtain. Sus Mariosa, Tiago whispers. She got wings like a bat. He slowly realizes there's nothing below her waist but a few brackish red loops of what, guts? Torn intestines? Wait, it's not a whole figure. She has no legs. No legs. Oh my Jesus, an aswang. Putang ina, she's a manananggal. The aswang smiles, teeth a dingy slate gray, and from her mouth slips a dingy blood red thing like a snake, or maybe more like a thick dark earthworm that writhes wildly closer and closer to Tiago. It's her tongue, a 10-foot long tongue. Hold on, she's trying to suck my blood, the black harpy. He clenches his arms, his fists, shuts his eyes hard. The aswang's tongue slinks inches nearer to his neck. His body in the shadowy center of the room seems to sprout fur, arms and legs thinning and crackling into wolf-like limbs. Tiago is growing taller and bulkier, t-shirt and boxers ripping apart like tissue. He growls, dark yellowish fangs flashing out of the lengthening snout of his face. Tiago is also an aswang, a shapeshifter churning into a huge black dog, larger than a man, standing wide on hind legs. The two monsters growl and snarl at each other, a tableau carved into the dusky, sweaty air of the room. Then it stops. Both of them laugh. They snicker and snort, convulse in dark shrieks and screams of black humor. The manananggal pulls in her slimy tongue, waves at Tiago, and swoops out of the window. Her pterodactyl wings sighing velvety tick-tick, wak-wak sounds. Tiago lifts his noble black head to the heavens and howls. All right, now here's that same scene from her point of view. And this poem is called How Clara Met Santiago. And this is a pantoum, so there'll be some lines repeating, as you'll hear. So this is Clara talking. So there's Santiago de la Cruz in his bedroom, sleeping. I'd been watching Tiago from a distance for many days, so handsome, his black hair glowing in the sunlight when I would see him at market selling his vegetables. I'd been watching Tiago from a distance for many days, and tonight I decided I would visit him, see him at home, and not just when he's at market selling his vegetables. So I split my body, breaking in half as usual at the waist. Since tonight I decided I would visit him, see him at home. I stood in my bedroom, slowly unfurling wet black wings as I split my body, ripping in half. I lost my place. Ripping in half painfully at the waist. Let me back up a little. I stood in my bedroom, slowly unfurling wet black wings as I split my body, ripping in half painfully at the waist. Then I looked towards the wide, beautiful moon, so free after long minutes in my room, unfurling my wet wings. I launched myself into night air and headed into the sky, then flew down towards Tiago's house, so beautiful, so free. The village was lovely, candle lamps glowing in windows. I turned myself toward the earth, falling out of the sky, and alighted gently, so gently on his woven thatch roof. His house was lovely, a lamp gleaming in his window. I took care not to upset even the flame as I entered, and floated gently, so gently up near the woven roof. Now I watch Tiago, his sweat glistening as he lies in bed. I took care not to awaken or disturb him as I entered, but now his eyes open, dark brown irises glowing. I watch Tiago. I keep very still. He lightly stirs in bed. I stay as still as I can, my wings softly fluttering. His eyes are open and staring, brown irises growing. And then I see he has spotted me. He can see me. I stay as still as I can, slow my wings fluttering. From the way Tiago's brows knit, his arms tensed, I know he has definitely spotted me. Can he see me trying to blend into dark ceiling, blend into black? Then his brows grow more black, his arms tensed with spreading, darkening fur, his teeth growing long. I try to hide in the ceiling. His body grows black and blacker. His body contorts into a giant dog with thick fur, feet and hands clawed, fangs long. And then I realize the truth. We're both Aswan. We both start to laugh and laugh, this huge man dog and I. Waving blithely to him, I turn to fly away. This truth will open up our lives. We're both Aswan. He's so handsome, black fur shining in the moonlight. Knowing I will see him again, I turn to fly away. And there's my Tiago, head up to the sky, howling. All right, so that's the beginning of the novel where we first meet them, and they first meet each other. And then the novel then goes back and tells their life stories before this point, and they have various adventures, and they fall in love, and eventually Clara is found out by her neighbors to be an Aswan, and there's sort of one of the poems is about them coming to attack, and Santiago has to rescue her. So they have to flee for their lives, and in the middle of this long escape, they go to a church and on a Saturday morning and wake up the priest and convince him to marry them. So this poem is called Aswang Wedding, Early Saturday Morn. The Aswang lovers held each other's hand, kneeling at the teakwood communion rail of La Iglesia de San Agustin, the simple granite-walled Spanish chapel not far from the shores of Manila Bay. Heads lowered, the humble country couple waited while the parish priest, Padre Ray, drowsy, wished he was asleep in his bed. Raising his hand, he droned, In nomine Patris et Filii. Dawn, a faint red, kindled stained glass, the deep dark shade of blood draining from a body torn and shredded. Rings, sign of the cross, yes, but Padre would later tell how his heart sank at the end, fangs glinting in the bride's smile, the groom's mouth. So then to escape, they leave the Philippines and move to the US. The Philippines, so this is 1937, and the Philippines is an American colony at that time. And they happened to arrive in San Francisco just at the exact same time that the Golden Gate Bridge has been completed in 1937. And this is called Aswang honeymoon at the Golden Gate. Isn't that simply magnificent, Tiago? Clara pointed above the steamship's prow as they sailed under the brand new bridge, its orange towers gleaming in the setting sun. Tiago could only nod, speechless at the beauty of the orange cables shimmering as they swooped in a graceful arc. Thousands of San Franciscans had walked across the Golden Gate that day, a grand feat never before possible. Clara and Tiago hurried, but got to the bridge too late, almost dark. The next morning, at the dedication, people snickered at the loony old man, the bridge watchman, who swore he'd heard leathery wings walk, walk, and saw silhouetted against the moon a bizarre flying thing holding a gigantic dog. Holding a dog? Nearby listeners laughed, pantomiming drinking from a bottle behind the poor man's back. Crazy drunk, they whispered to each other, smirking. How beautiful it must have been on top of the 800-foot tower nearest to the glistening lights of San Francisco. Tiny diamonds strewn on jet black cloth. The bride's wings beating slow and soft. The groom's canine fur shining sable and sleek, holding hand and paw in the velvet night, 1,000 stars showering glittery light. So they have a son, they birth a son, and the couple decide, or at least Clara decides, that for the sake of their boy and his safety, that they'll forswear Aswang ways and just, kind of hide in plain sight and be an ordinary human family. So here's a poem about the son's baptism, because even though they're occult monsters, they're Filipinos, right? So they're Catholic. All right. So here's a poem about the son's baptism. Aswang christening, a family photo. Radiant parents and bouncy baby, all silken and crinoline, taffeta and three-piece wool are posed in this portrait next to the baptismal font at St. George's. The baby smells of milk and, slightly, of turned earth. They name him Malcolm. The mother, Clara, whispers to herself she'll swear off womb water, that sweet fetal liquor, now that she's bearing children. Santiago, the father, thanks the parish priest, but thinks to himself how plump the man is. Imagines Father Simon running for his life, pale skin glimmering in dim forest. Behind them, in stained glass, a trick of the light turns the Holy Ghost, a dove, black, not white. So you can see that already, even though they've just the husband and wife have made a pact, that they're not going to be Aswang anymore. Santiago already is having a hard time with tamping down his Aswang self. So the big question in the novel at this point is whether Malcolm is also an Aswang. So here are a couple of small poems about the discovery of whether or not he is. First, this is called Baby's Wings. Clara picked up the baby from his crib. Her little boy, Malcolm, swaddled in a white gown, like a cotton cloud or maybe a winding sheet, his caramel tan face framed by a bib. Malcolm smiled at her, his hands like brown starfish in warm sea sand, his little feet playing peekaboo amid all the white cloth. She held him up in front of her, and a frown crossed his face. The gown ripped in the pleats at his shoulders, and out popped wings, a moth's slow, dusky wingbeat. A mother's warning. Clara gently rubbed the baby's forehead, and as Malcolm's eyes closed and he drifted off to sleep, the moth wings on his shoulders pulled inside, till there was no trace except red creases marking where they had unfolded. Clara smiled and frowned, thought of him older and no longer cute. Whenever he would ride the night wind, soar the sky, they'd send soldiers, hunters, to kill him. Clara rubbed at the red marks, frantic. That they faded, disappeared, barely consoled her. All right. So a few years later, World War II breaks out, and Santiago, who's had difficulty being a human, these few years, enlists in the army so he can fight the Japanese back home in the Philippines. But his real motivation, of course, is that this will allow him to kill, right? To be a predator. In the meantime, back in San Francisco, Malcolm is now 7. Aswang childhood. And this is Clara talking. Can such innocence kill and kill? Tonight, Malcolm, 7 years old, his father at war, caught a bat in his bedroom at bedtime. I was afraid my baby would get bit, but he held it tight. I could see its fur glowing black between his fingers, and I'm almost sure it was screaming. In utter calm, with an angelic smile, my boy tore its wings off. Worst, my son's own wings then came out, trembling, as the bat died. What future deaths will come, Malcolm? Since it's almost Halloween, here's a poem from the novel that's for the season, in which Clara remembers their lives before the baby. This is called Happy Halloween Surprise. Clara lay in bed, recalling Tiago in much happier times, memories that had her smiling, pranks and little harmless crimes. One Halloween, when she was pregnant, the two imagined themselves as parents taking their little one on the streets of San Francisco, trick or treat. Tiago shifted into his canine form, as big as a Great Dane, and out they went, dog and dame, taking a stroll in the moonshine. Laughing children gathered around in costume, petting her lovely hound. I think when I wrote that poem, I was deciding that, man, this thing is so dark. I wanted to have a kind of a fun poem. All right. And now the last poem I'm going to read is from Malcolm's point of view a few years later. And he's when he's in 4th grade, and he is being trained, to hide his Aswang nature. And he is attacked by a bully. All right, so this is called Malcolm and the Bully, 4th grade. His ugly mouth, with jagged teeth it seemed, sprayed spit on my face as he screamed insults so close I could bite him if I wanted. My shoulders itched with the budding of wings. His friends formed a ring of yells around us. Fight, fight. Fangs began to lengthen in my mouth as blows fell on my face, upraised arms. Only thing I could see in squinted eyes was a red haze. In my mind, I walked up to the edge, but heard Mama's calm voice, resist, Malcolm, hold on. Knocked down to the street, I saw a blue bird's wing on the asphalt, torn, beautiful. And then it was over, laughter fading as they left. I whispered, yes, Mama, resist, resist. Thank you.
Oh, bravo. Um, I haven't done this before, and I hope you don't mind, but can we ask for an encore? I can't wait till you put this out. They're wonderful. They're just wonderful. Is there another one that you might share with us before we go to questions? And um, I'll also say this just before you do that, our participants are few enough that when Vince concludes, I think we could all just chat with him and not rely on formality. So Vince, please, can we have one more?
Sure. I have to
Thank
find one on my
you.
computer here.
Okay.
Hang on 1 second.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Um, here's one called the crib, and this it refers actually to the crib that Malcolm uh, will 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 sleep in. Um, and the crib, it's made up of two poems, one spoken by Clara and another spoken by Santiago. So Clara says, I don't know how Tiago got Nara wood here in San Francisco, the national tree of the Philippines, used in native healing of tumors. For days now, Tiago would get up at the crack of dawn and plane 3-inch wide long bars, sawing and hammering until sunset. Finally, it was done. A crib for the baby. Ship-shaped boat we three would sail into the destiny we're making. So proud of Tiago, able now to shun his Aswan craving. And then this is Aswan's, I'm sorry, this is Santiago's, in Santiago's voice. I know this carpentering makes Clara happy, thinking I'm finally becoming human, no longer a shape-shifting Aswan. How can I be anything else? This Nara wood is always Nara wood, and nothing can turn it into balsa. I'm just a swan. For her sake, I pretend I'm not, but I live for the chase under the hard, bright moon, hunting men. Even with the baby coming, a swan is all I am. Clara, I give you this crib, but I'm still a swan. Thank you.
You included that among the 10 of your excerpt. I loved it. I invite everyone. Let's see. I have to ask you all to unmute, I guess, to unmute. And if you've got any questions, I have a bunch. So if no one else does, I can begin with mine. Let's see. I'm going to make sure I've enabled people to chat if they want to. And okay, I think I've asked everyone to unmute. If I haven't, make yourself visual and let me know. Okay. Well, I've double clicked on all the other ones and I see Bryant is here. Okay, but I'm going to invoke executive privilege and ask questions first. So in terms of the Aswang, and I love how you say Aswang versus the Aswang, or okay. In terms of the Aswang, we, the American public who follows these things, were first introduced to it. I think others may share it on Grimm. The Aswang there had the long tongue and was a singular, was one thing. So I'm curious, is it traditional that the Aswang is just a group name for monsters, or is the Aswang that creature that sucks out amniotic fluid and kills babies, because that's what it was in Grimm? Like, how accurate was that? Tell us about yours and the difference.
Yes, that was actually fairly accurate. They didn't have it grow wings. I've seen that episode. They did not have it grow wings, and they did not have it split in half, which obviously causes all kinds of computer graphic problems. So, but the Aswang are actually that's kind of a, what would you call that, an umbrella term for a group of all kinds of monsters, many different kinds of monsters.
So it's not
You were right.
just,
It's
yeah.
yeah, it's a it's a category, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Someone else? Because if not, I've got more.
I actually have one.
Great.
It's more about the
Hey,
structure.
Brian.
Hey, how are you? So yeah, I had a question about I guess the structure. You were saying it was a novel in verse, right? So how how do you manage the expository parts versus the parts that are speaking? Are they all? Is there a specific structure for when you're using exposition versus some other thing that you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm calling it a novel in poems because it's made up. It will look like a collection of poems, but they're all narrative. And so I'm trying to write it in such a way that that exposition, that exposition, that narrative stuff in between, is actually implied, and I'm hoping that it can be followed. Today I sort of gave you guys, I did narration in between, right? But so it's not actually a novel in verse in the sense of, like Dante, where the whole thing is just all one piece, right? Of
Yeah.
100 cantos all together. These are all separate little chunks, little sonnets, little sestinas. Well, not little sestinas aren't little, but and then together they create a quilt of narrative.
It's an interesting idea because it sounds like there's lots of room for interpretation between each poem and amongst all of these. So like not everybody's going to connect them in the same way.
Well, I hope they get it close.
Well, yeah. I mean, and again, I guess that's the way when you're trying to use predominantly narrative poetry, you think you're kind of hoping that they kind of follow along with you. But
Right.
What made you begin with 1937? Now that's the other thing that interests me. It's not ancient of days. But it's not today. And you use the war and the San Francisco Bridge. What was the inspiration for that? Because I find that really compelling also.
It kind of pivots around when the bridge was constructed, because it was finished in May of 1937. And so I wanted them to arrive at that point, and so that was kind of the pivot, not the climactic pivot, but so that I worked backwards from that to get that beginning date. And then of course it would only be what, 5 years before the war would start, right? And so, and I also wanted it to be at a time when the Philippines was part of the US, so that it would be easy for them to come over to the US. Yeah. Something that maybe isn't clear necessarily is that in that very first poem, they're actually in the town of Kutud in the Philippines, which is where they reenact every year on Good Friday. They reenact the crucifixion. People actually volunteer to be nailed to crosses for a few minutes. And so I wanted that to be sort of so that poem is called Encounter I forget what it's called now, so it's in Holy Week. And
do you footnote that at all? I mean, that just explodes what's even going on with them.
yeah, I probably should footnote that, but it's explained. It's sort of explained in the poem. I mean, if a person is reading the poem, sitting down reading the poem, I think they could probably get it. But I know that when you're just hearing it, that's probably not so clear.
Did you grow up with stories of Aswang?
Oh yeah, yeah. All Filipinos will tell you that. The aswang is really a boogeyman, right? And so that keeps you from sneaking out at night, I guess.
Now I see someone with your name laughing. Was that true, Gabe, for you too? Am I to surmise that this is one of your kids?
Yes.
So did he do that to you also?
Enough so. I definitely am very familiar with the swan, especially so in the form of his poetry. So I'm very familiar with how he expresses those, and I was very excited actually to hear some of those poems tonight.
Yay, team. Thank you.
Aku, I didn't raise my kids with these stories. I'm a little embarrassed to say.
Oh, you did not.
I did not. Yeah.
I thought, so well, that's okay. You kept them liberated from the boogeyman.
Yeah. Here, I'll read that part.
Okay, thank you.
A bachelor farmer named Santiago de la Cruz lounges half asleep, half dreaming of the Easter sunrise mass day after tomorrow, and of today's penitentes. So these are penitents, but they're using the Filipino word. Today's penitentes flogging their own backs into bloody crosshatch, a couple crucified for a handful of long minutes. So they
I,
also,
I,
you
I,
also have,
yeah,
you also have people walking around town.
I took it metaphorically.
No, it's very literal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
They still do that. They still do that. There's a guy who's sort of the king of the crucifixions. He does it every year. If you Google this, you'll find it. And he's well known in the Philippines for that.
Oh my gosh. The hair shirt and the lashing. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Are there other questions? I don't want to hog it but I certainly can.
There's questions on Facebook. Can you see them?
No, but if you can, because I can't divvy up my screen that well. So
Okay.
if you can, that would be wonderful. Yay, Vince.
So Jody Reyes says, what informed your decision to use a variety of received forms?
Excellent question.
Okay.
That was on my list. So that's great. Excellent, Jody. Thank you.
And Jody's a Filipino poet. Well, I guess these days I'm mostly a formalist. I used to be half and half, working in free verse and forms, but so this was just a natural thing for me to do. Jody, I don't know if that answers the question. You can write another one if you.
Well, I have a follow-up to that because I was going to ask about the forms and if there were particular, like what made a decision to do the sonnet versus the pantoum? Like, was it anything particular that was happening? And do you outline the action and then think of forms to fulfill it? Or are you just writing and the form arises? I mean, please speak to that.
I just write, and whatever form happens to work out, is what I use. I did do the pantoum there because I wanted those repetitions in that particular story.
Mm-hmm.
I cheat a lot in that pantoum because the lines aren't exactly the same, but I wanted that kind of cyclical, that recycling to happen in that poem. As far as the other poems, I start writing and then I find that it becomes a particular form.
Are there any villanelles among them?
No, there are not. I have a few more poems. I'm not done yet, so I'll have to do a villanelle. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'd love to see one.
there are prose poems. There are sestinas. There are sonnets. There's even a Pushkin sonnet in there. The Happy Halloween Surprise. That's a Pushkin sonnet. I've got what else? Curdle sonnets.
I don't even know what those are. Curdles?
Oh, the Curdle sonnet was invented by Hopkins, by Gerard Manley Hopkins.
Oh, I know him, but oh my gosh, I have to look that up.
Yeah.
Curdle, like C-U-R-D-L-E?
C-U-R-T-A-L, Curtle.
Oh, Curtle.
As in short. Yeah. We have another question.
Yay.
Oh, Jody says, thanks, Vince. Susan Pangilinan says, have you found an audience with the younger generation who love monsters, witches, otherworldly as with the Harry Potter lovers? Huh. Great question, Susan. Thank you. I must confess, I don't know. I hope so. Um, but I haven't heard back from anyone, from any younger readers who said they like that stuff. The This is getting published in singly, in different journals and so on. Um, Recently, a group of 10 was published together in the website called Making the Novel.
Please, everyone,
Uh,
check it out. It's
and,
amazing. It's so wonderful. I'm so
and then
eager.
six of them are coming out from Glass Lyre Press in an anthology called what is that? Aeolian Harp, the Aeolian Harp anthology, which is an annual thing, and I'm very lucky to be one of, I don't know, 8 poets that are in that anthology.
Congratulations.
Susan says maybe the young people would be a good group to target.
Marketing advice you're getting there.
It does. The story is sort of like a young adult novel. I hadn't even thought about marketing it that way. What a great idea.
The poems I read just struck me to the core, and it was wonderful to hear several of them in your voice this evening. What was the ignition for this? Where did you get the idea for this?
I've been interested in Aswang, in the Aswang mythos for a long time. I mean, it's just, all of the different kinds of monsters, and particularly the Manananggal. I just found it so, and particularly the Manananggal was interesting to me because there's no European cognate to that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are the Manananggal is echoed in different Southeast Asian cultures. They have similar monsters, like in Indonesia and Malaysia, for example. I think they have something very similar. And I forgot the question. What did you?
What was the initiating spark for you? What?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I had written one poem before that was a swan poem, and it was also a story, but it was just within one poem, and something that I got interested in is that when I started to do research on Aswang mythology and folklore, I found that they were always just horrible monsters. They didn't have real lives, The focus was always on their victims and the people that were afraid of them. And so it occurred to me that what maybe we could find out what the Aswang are like, And then I thought, they should fall in love and have a life and have kids and so.
And you had two different kinds fall in love and
Right.
and appreciate each other's differences. I don't know, folks. Maybe because I'm hearing it for the second time. The scene with is her name Claire? With
Clara.
Clara holding Santiago over the Golden Gate Bridge is just magic. It's just unbelievable that her new husband, and she's taking him for a ride, and he's like a werewolf. Although I shouldn't say that because you don't call him that. He's a weird dog thing.
Exactly. That's what they're called, weird dogs.
Weird dog.
Because there are no wolves in the Philippines, so they call them weird dogs.
So yeah, the weird dog being held by the bat woman with it's just, Vince, it's so brilliant. It's so brilliant. I can't wait. So what are your next steps? You said you have more to write, which means folks like me have to wait very impatiently. Really, because I want to read them, all at once. I want to find out what happens with the kid. I'm interested in that. It seems like you made him like the mother, but is it spoiling a plot point that maybe he has aspects of the father, like he's a weird dog with wings, or
Well, Aku, I have not written these poems uh, in the narrative order, in the chronological order
Oh, in
within.
sequence. Oh,
I've
okay.
jumped around, and I'm at the point now. I've got maybe 30 poems now, and I'm
Wow.
getting to the point where I'm filling in. I'm like, oh, there needs to be something here. Like Bryant was
Gotcha.
asking, I need something here to make that bridge, to make
Mhm.
a narrative bridge.
Mm.
So I've been doing that, and um, I still haven't quite figured out how it's going to end. So I mean, I
Oh,
just try to discover that as I write.
oh, so what year was the kid born?
He was born in 37 probably, or maybe 38.
In
He
38.
was 7 and during the war, so he'd be 37, because it would have been 1944 that that the Philippine American soldiers were sent to the Philippines to fight.
Oh, oh, yeah. I mean, you've just looped in real history as well. Um,
Oh yeah, there's a poem um, that which is a letter that Santiago is writing Clara. Can I read that?
yes.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Let me see if I can find it.
We want a novel.
Um, no, that's not it. Okay, hang on. Sorry, everyone. Here. Okay. So this is a letter that he write. This is actually what's called tanka prose. So the prose part is a letter that that Santiago writes Clara when he is in basic training. Uh, as it turns out, I was in the army, and I was in basic training at Fort Ord, and I put I put Santiago in the same training post. So this is so there's a letter, and then there's a tanka, which is a five line Japanese form, very small tanka, and then there's a little note after that. All right. So a soldier writes his wife, 22 November 42, 2200 hours, Fort Ord, California. Dearest Clara, it is Sunday night after lights out. The barracks are quiet as the men sleep to be ready for a hike in the morning and bivouac tomorrow night. I am writing this in the latrine since the lights in here are on all night. I can't sleep. I am missing you terribly, querida mia. I miss you and Malcolm so. Earlier this evening, I slipped out to look at the moon. Tonight it was full. The clouds above were few, simply wisps of stringy cotton. The bowl of the sky was immense, like a huge colander sprinkled with many sharp points of light. The moon was like a woman's round face, like your lovely face, mi amor. I could almost smell your lovely scent, faint like sampaguita flowers. The moon, high in the south, shed its light across the parade ground, usually so dusty when we trained during the day, but tonight a silver plain. I felt the stirrings of our kind, but resisted. I will miss having Thanksgiving with you and the baby this week, but I must do my duty for our country, for the states, and also our islands, our land of the morning. I send you and Malcolm my love. Forever yours, Santiago. Now here's the tanka. The moon watches me. The lovely pain as my bones shift and grind. Black fur, paws quiet pad. I begin to stalk the guard on his beat. And then the note is a headline. And the headline reads, Fort Ord Sentry killed by wolf. The Salinas Californian, that's the name of the newspaper, November 24th, 1942.
Oh, oh, you're so wicked and you're so wonderful. You're so wonderful. Um, I I love that they're also dealing with immigrant issues.
Yep.
I mean, is that deliberate? Are you first generation? What generation are you?
My parents were the immigrants. I was
Your
born in
parents,
the
you were
Mhm.
born here. So you observed their struggle? Is that what you're citing when you're when you
Absolutely, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Um,
yeah.
and my parents moved to the Philippines when I was probably a toddler. I don't. Um, they have both passed now, so I can't ask anyone.
Oh,
Nobody
oh,
knows, but
I'm s-
when I was little, so for a handful of years, I did live in the Philippines, and I remember I have
oh,
childhood memories of the Philippines. So that
wow.
comes back to
So that reinforms that connection.
right.
You know, you're doing something I think is really quite revolutionary.
Oh, thank you.
But you know this, right? And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the Philippine literati are aware of this as well, and the compellingness and the beautiful ways in which you just deliver so much um, in these poems. You're talking about humanity by looking at the monstrous, and they're so human and they're so wonderful, these characters. I mean, I'm really grateful that you've embarked on this. And like I said, the ones I read, I was just like, I've been so blown away every time I read another one. Um, so, okay, but back to the question, I skipped over the question. What have other um, Filipino or Filipino American about this work? Are they exploring the mythos like you are also? Because I'm not familiar enough to know. So I've got great appreciation from just the speculative and science fiction side, and I wanted to know if you could comment on the cultural side, the ethnic cultural side of it.
Okay. Could you repeat that, Aqua? Your Wi-Fi was.
Oh, was I breaking up? Sorry. Okay. So I was asking if you've heard from or through the Filipino literati, the Filipino creators about using this mythos. How do they receive it? I said, because I receive it really deeply. I wondered if you've gotten other kinds of feedback.
Okay. No, the writers in the Philippines don't know that I'm doing this. Um, but
Hmm.
now that Jody has heard the presentation today, people might hear about it. So,
Okay.
I don't know. But anyway, I think that probably people have seen my poems, coming out one at a time. But I don't. But I have not. I haven't happened to tell anyone in the Philippines that I'm working on this particular project, in this way.
Mhm, mhm. Are you keeping it a secret?
No, no,
Okay.
not. I just
Okay.
haven't.
You just no, that's okay. You've been doing the work versus the other, horn blasting. It's fabulous. Any other questions as we head toward 8 o'clock? I know I will share this with the audience. I had told all of the writers that I wanted it to be a half hour. So there would be this time for people to talk to the writer. So um, any other
Aqua,
questions?
I actually practiced, and it was about 20 minutes, but
Thank you.
it got
Thank,
longer as when I actually did it.
well, and we wanted more because it was just, it's such a great feast. It's so nourishing. Um, anyone else? Uh, I saw someone start to, let me just, I hope I've enabled everyone to unmute if they wanted to. And if not, because we are at we are almost at 8 o'clock. Okay, going. Vince, it's been fabulous. I love this project. I love this work. I congratulate you. It brings some of the poems brought tears to my eyes. I had to stop. I had to get up. It's so compelling. It's because you do this, folks. I'm not just moving, smushing him on. He he does this essential work that puts together not just the speculative, but the dream of the immigrant, deep questions about humanity, deep questions about inheritance. What do you want your child to be? How do you train your child to survive? How do you make it from there to here? All of that through the lens of some things that are terrestrial but alien to us. It's just beautiful work, and I thank you ever so much for coming and sharing it with us.
Thank you, Aqua. And I hope to finish this novel probably within the next 6 months or so. I mean,
Wow.
assuming that the poetry universe is with me. Um, there, and then there is that Aeolian harp anthology coming out with six poems. Okay. Well,
So
thanks for
thank
coming,
you.
everyone. And
Thank
thanks everyone on Facebook.
Thank you all. And
Thanks. Great job.
join us again in a couple of weeks when you'll hear another poet talk about poems of possibilities. Thank you for joining us on Speculative Sundays. Thank you again, Vince. Be well, everybody. Stay safe. No joy in the making.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.